Welcome to Tuesday Talks. I'm so happy to be here with you today. If you have been joining us for all the Tuesday Talks we've been having in the spring and this fall, it is wonderful to have you back. If this is your first time, welcome. Really glad to have you join us today. This is definitely a special event where we get to host wonderful admissions officers here in the US to talk to you in Korea specifically. So a big thank you to our panelists for waking up very early in the morning to talk to our students in Korea and also Canada. I'd want to also, I forgot to omit that we have admissions officers from Canada and the US today. So welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the art and design portfolio. And today we have Donald Kelly from OCAD University, Yoi Tanaka from Otis College of Art and Design, and Isabel Sanchez from RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design. So as usual, we will be presenting and then we'll have questions at the end. So please do use the Q&A box and you can type in your questions anytime throughout. And so without further ado, I am going to hand it over to our panelists. Take it away. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Donald Kelly. I am the Manager Undergraduate Admissions from OCAD University in Toronto in the province of Ontario in Canada. OCAD University is the oldest and largest art and design school in Canada. We were founded in 1876, and we still have our original building, which was built in the 1920s that you can't see in the photo on the screen, but it is here within this structure, behind this structure. Again, it's OCAD University. We're in Toronto. If you've been to Toronto or if you've seen images of Toronto, you've probably seen an image of the CN Tower, which is the tall tower to the left of the screen, just beside the black box. And we're located right downtown in the center of the city. And this is our main campus building. We do have 11 buildings in total on campus. Again, we're one of the largest art schools in Canada, or we are the largest in Canada, and we're one of the largest in North America. We have about 4,700 students in 17 undergraduate programs and 7 graduate programs. We offer 3 undergraduate degrees, a Bachelor of Fine Arts, a Bachelor of Design, and a Bachelor of Arts, which is an honors art history degree. We also offer the same designations at the graduate level. We're about a 21% international student population, and Toronto is a very multicultural city, so you'll see that reflected in our student population. They come from just over 60 countries around the world. We have over 500 faculty members and about a 16-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio. Those are the highlights of OCAD U, and I'll turn it over to Yoi.
So hi everyone, my name is Yoi Tanaka and I am the Associate Dean of Admissions at Otis College of Art and Design in Los Angeles. Our campus is in the bottom right-hand corner. If you're familiar with LA, we are located on the west side of the city, so very close to the beach, just south of Santa Monica and Venice Beach. We're also located just over a mile from Loyola Marymount University, which is another university that we have a partnership with that allows you to cross-register for classes on both campuses. We were founded in 1918, so we're the first professional art school in Southern California. This is a list on the right-hand side of the different BFA majors that we offer, so all a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. Our largest program is digital media, which includes animation, game and entertainment design, and motion design, followed by communication arts, which includes graphic design and illustration. We're also the only college in the world to have a 4-year BFA in toy design. If you've been to LA, you know that it's a very diverse city. It has the largest Koreatown outside of Korea, really amazing food, art, culture, music. world-class museums, really great city to study the fields of art and design. There's over 700,000 creative professionals that work in Los Angeles, lots of opportunities for internships during school and after graduation. And in terms of our community, our student population is about 1,100. 22% international, with many students coming from Korea, 400 professional faculty members. And in terms of the community on campus, we do have kind of a traditional college campus. So students feel very safe on the campus. It's very small, everyone knows each other, and just a really welcoming and supportive community for international students. And so now I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Isabel at RISD.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Just to reintroduce myself, my name is Isabel. I'm an admissions officer at the Rhode Island School of Design, and I'm so excited to be talking to you all today. So to give you a little bit more information and background about Rhode Island School of Design, RISD for short. So RISD was founded by a small collective of women in 1877 and has since grown to become one of the most influential art and design colleges in the world. We're located about an hour south of Boston and about 3 hours north of New York City. So we are kind of situated between two international hubs. RISD has about 2,000 undergraduate students, 500 graduate students, so definitely a nice small community. All first-year students begin their RISD education in the Experimental and Foundation Studies program, or EFS. You'll then choose your desired major in the spring semester of your first year, and you're guaranteed a spot in whatever program you choose. So you then enter your major as a sophomore. So you come to RISD undeclared. We offer 16 different majors. They're all 4-year degrees where you'd graduate with a Bachelor of Fine Arts, with the exception of architecture. That is a 5-year Bachelor of Architecture degree. So at RISD, you'll work closely with instructors. We have a 9-to-1 student to faculty ratio. Our professors are architects, entrepreneurs, researchers, activists, and more. They've won Guggenheim Fellowships and National Design Awards. They have a great deal of specific expertise in their area, but most professors work in a cross-disciplinary way, and that research, that way of working really informs the way they teach. And yeah, in general at RISD, most students work kind of across disciplines. And we do also kind of encourage RISD students to, learn about problem solving and, thinking creatively, innovation. So an example of kind of a real life example of that is we recently had a research collaboration sponsored by the auto company Hyundai, where RISD student teams focused on scientifically informed design practices. And one team drew inspiration from a cockroach exoskeleton from our nature lab, which you'll have to see photos of later. And that served as the inspiration and design basis for a customizable mobile shelter. So yeah, definitely kind of crossing the lines between science, engineering, fine arts. So yeah, at RISD, learning is split across studio courses and liberal arts classes. About a third of your credits will be in the liberal arts. And if you want more opportunities to take liberal arts classes, RISD students can take liberal arts classes at Brown University, right next door to RISD. So there's no additional tuition, no additional admission. Yeah, as long as it fits in your schedule, you can take liberal arts classes at Brown. And those credits transfer back in as RISD credits. Yeah, so RISD and Brown share neighboring campuses. So you also have access to Brown's extensive libraries and facilities. Students interact socially. There's activities and events that take place like lectures, concerts, exhibits, and those are open to the RISD community as well. We do also offer a separate joint program called the Brown RISD Dual Degree Program. So this is a separate 5-year program where students are considered full-time students at both Brown and RISD at the same time. And you graduate with 2 degrees. So a Bachelor of Fine Arts from RISD and a bachelor's degree from Brown. So that is the briefest overview of the dual degree that I can give. But if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them at the end. But yeah, RISD also has a career center dedicated to, helping you figure out what you want to do after RISD and making that happen, helping you find internships, jobs, other opportunities in the creative field. We have one-on-one meetings, larger events. We do also have a partnership with Harvard Business School Online, I should say, which offers RISD students access to their interactive online program, Credential of Readiness or CORE program. So this can kind of help students gain business skills and knowledge in addition to their, education at RISD. So that's just kind of to show you that, at RISD, you'll have this really kind of deep dive education into, studio art or into design practice, but you'll be supported by your fellow students, your professors, and our career services. Yeah, and I'll leave it there.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the portfolio requirements, which is really a key to getting into most art and design schools or most art and design programs. And an important thing to remember when you're looking at portfolio requirements and preparing your portfolio is that each school will have slightly different requirements. So it's really important to do your research and to make sure that you're prepared for the schools that you're applying to. So in terms of our school's portfolio requirements, I'll start with OCAD University. For OCAD, we're looking for 8 to 10 examples of your best finished or finalized work. And that's for most of our programs. We do offer a creative writing program that requires a writing portfolio, so that's sort of outside of the visual portfolio requirement. We really want to see your process work, how you come up with your ideas, how you work through your concepts, things like that. And that can be represented to us as a sketchbook or a workbook. And we really want to see work that is directly related to the discipline you're applying to. Some of our programs are direct entry. Some have a common first year, like a foundation year. A statement of intent is also required as one of the pieces or part of your portfolio. And I'll turn it over to Yoy now to talk about Otis.
So at Otis, we have an open portfolio requirement, which is 10 to 20 images of your best, most recent work. So it's really kind of up to you to curate the most creative examples of work that you've done. If your work is mostly digital or lens-based, you do have to include 5 works done in other mediums. And then we also new for this year have a structured portfolio requirement. So if you are looking for a little bit more guidance on what to create, we do give 3 different prompts to create 10 total images. You can see the prompts listed there. And this is really to help you start building series into your portfolio. In addition to those 10 images, you can then submit 10 additional images, which are your choice to include. And I will put a link to our portfolio website into the chat window, which has a lot of great resources for helping you to develop the portfolio, some tips and advice.
Wonderful. So as Donald mentioned, for RISD, your visual requirements will be the most important part of your application. So we ask for two different parts. So the first part is your portfolio. So we ask for 12 to 20 examples of your strongest work. And that's really the only kind of requirement, is that you include at least 12 images. We keep it really open-ended because we want to see what you're interested in. We want to see what you're passionate about. We want to kind of see how you bring your own point of view or your own voice to the work that you make. a really strong portfolio can look like a lot of different things. So that's why we keep it really open-ended. And then the second part of your visual requirements for RISD is an assignment. So we have an assignment that we give to all students, all applicants, and this changes every year. So if you're a junior or a sophomore or even a freshman, the assignment you see online won't be the assignment you'll have when you apply. We change those in the summer, so always check back in the summer to see the newest one. But for this year, the assignment, to kind of briefly kind of summarize it, is that we ask you to identify something in need of repair and then use any material or approach to fix it. So that's the part one of the assignment. That's the visual side of the assignment. And then we do also ask for a written statement telling us about your, why you chose your item or your construct or your idea to fix, and why you chose to fix it in the way that you did. And this is just meant to be, less than a page long, just to kind of give us some more background on your thought process. But in general, with the assignment this year's, but any assignment that we do give, we really just want to see how you take a generalized assignment and make it interesting to you. How do you put your own spin on it? Try to avoid making kind of concrete responses. Take some time to think about it, but yeah, we really want to see how you make it interesting to you. Thanks. So now I want to move into just sharing some overall portfolio tips. So first is to familiarize yourself with the digital platform that you'll submit your work through. So for all of our schools here today, you will be submitting your portfolio through SlideRoom, which is an online portfolio platform. So it's probably the most common platform used, and it accepts many different file formats. And for Otis and for RISD, you'll access it through the Common application. But that is a United States specific, or at least our school specific thing. Not all schools use the Common App, but Otis and RISD do. And yeah, you'll see that you have an area where you can upload the image, and then you can include, the title, you can include the size, additional information. Definitely make sure that you proofread your descriptions. There's no kind of automatic spell check, so definitely maybe have another person just proofread your description so there's not any accidental typos. And another really important part of putting together your portfolio is trying to document your work in the strongest light possible, or to show us your work in the clearest way possible. We're not expecting you to have the fanciest camera or the highest tech equipment, but, show your work in, we don't get to see your work in person. So your documentation is really going to be the only way we get to view your work. So be sure that, you photograph your work on kind of a solid white or black or even gray background, so that all the focus is on your work. Try to make sure that it's lit evenly and lit, brightly. A good tip is to, bring your artwork outside and photograph it in the shade. If you have flat drawings or smaller, paintings, you can scan those. That way it'll have kind of an even light source. And definitely document your work and then back up that documentation as you go. It's, no fun to lose your files and to, kind of lose all that hard work. So definitely be sure you save and back up your work. And I think even kind of something I do is that as I'm working, I'll document my work. So I have a record of it. So if I want to keep working back into something or take it in a different direction, I can, because I still have that documentation. So if it utterly fails and just, ends up being terrible, you still have that documentation of your work at one point. So it kind of encourages you to be a little less precious with the way you work, which is always great. And then lastly, please don't over stylize your layout of your slides. We really just want to focus on the work itself. So please don't add any kind of like additional style elements that would detract or distract from your work. So adding to that is just some tips on what not to do in terms of documenting your work. As I mentioned before, we really want to be able to see your work the clearest way possible. So please don't put a lot of images together in one slide. That just becomes really difficult for us to see, and kind of distracts from your great ideas, from your finished piece or any standout process pieces. So less is more. Your portfolio isn't meant to be a catalog of every single piece of work you've ever made. It's definitely meant to be a highly curated, small selection of your strongest pieces. So deciding what pieces to leave out is just as important as deciding what pieces to leave in. So I do also want to mention or just reiterate that, again, there's an area off to the side in slide room where you can include text descriptions. So please don't include those text descriptions in the actual image of the work. So if you're in a IB diploma program, I know IB kind of encourages that format. So you'll have to reformat some of your work for college applications, or at least for applying to RISD. We just ask that, again, let us focus on your art piece and then include that additional text or contextual information off to the side.
All right, so the next portfolio tip is to really think about the curation of your portfolio. So which pieces are you going to include? And really thinking about how you can play to your strengths when you are selecting your final images. So many of you probably have more than 20 images that you could potentially put in your portfolio, but really thinking about the portfolio requirements per each college that you're going to be applying to, and which images fit those requirements the best. So you might have a different portfolio for all of the different institutions that you're applying to, or you might organize the same images differently. So really think about your best, most recent work. It's not trying to show how you've improved over time. It really is kind of focusing again on your strengths. So these are just a list of a few of the ways that you might organize and group your images. So you might have a few different series, maybe series A and then series B. You might have a few different mediums that you excel in. So it could be drawings, then paintings, then sculptures. Maybe it's your sketchbook examples followed by your finished work. Maybe it's your more observational or technical drawing work followed by your more creative pieces. We will click through your images in the order that you place them into Slide Room. So it really does make sense to think about how you want us to experience your work and not just have it be arbitrary. So when you upload your images into Slide Room, it does allow you to kind of rearrange the images before you hit that final submit button. And, it really is true that you are judged based upon the best piece in your portfolio, but also the worst piece. So don't feel like you have to submit the maximum number of images. If there's maybe one piece that maybe doesn't fit with everything else, or maybe brings down the overall strength of your portfolio, that might be the one to take out and remove. And then our next tip is to add a series or a collection of artworks that explore the same theme or narrative into your portfolio. And we recommend that students do this so that they can demonstrate how they can explore a subject in depth. So it's always great to see how a student is really kind of passionate about an idea, a theme, a story, and that's where a series really kind of comes in handy. This is a 3-part series on self-care. And each of these images was submitted on a different slide, but I've combined them here just for simplicity's sake. But you can tell that they're part of the same series. They're all kind of executed in the same way. There is a progression from one image to the next. And that kind of really, again, demonstrates depth and exploration of a subject. You don't have to have your entire portfolio be one series or one concentration. We don't expect that you have, 15 images all on the same topic, but definitely make sure that you have, at least one series in your portfolio. And that can be a few images, it can be 5 images, it can be 6 images. It's really kind of up to you to kind of decide that.
And our next tip has to do with process, your sketchbook, your research. We really want to see how you come up with your ideas, how you work through things on a day-to-day basis, the messy stuff that leads up to a finished piece. So most of us, for most art schools, you want to include a sketchbook as one piece in your portfolio, or pieces from a sketchbook as pieces in your portfolio. And here are some options for submitting your sketchbook. You can scan different pages from your sketchbook. It could be from one sketchbook, it could be from multiple books. Edit them together into one PDF to upload as part of your portfolio submission. Another idea is to film a short video of you flipping through pages of your sketchbook to show us what it feels like, basically. So you're not narrating it, but just showing us in video the progression through your sketchbook. And your sketchbook or your process book or your creative journal, as we like to call it sometimes at OCAD, can include the preliminary sketches for final pieces. It can include research. It can include experimentation with mark making, with using different materials. It doesn't have to be pretty or precious. It's really the place where you explore what you're making, essentially. It's also important to know when to edit your sketchbook along with your finished or finalized pieces. You don't want to include a massive 100-page long PDF for us to look at. It can be smaller than that. It can be a few pages. It can be a few select images. And one of the most important tips I think that we have for you is to remember to have fun when you're creating your portfolio. We know it can be stressful. We know it's a lot of work, especially since there are slight differences with most portfolio requirements, but making is a fun process. Creating this should be a fun process. Show us what you're passionate about. Show us where your ideas are. Show us your interests and how you can convey that through the work that you're showing. All of this will sort of lead into your first year at our respective schools when you're creating work, and you'll find that you'll develop as you go through. So yeah, again, be creative, show us who you are through your work. Don't be afraid to show us your ideas, and again, have fun.
So many students or families or parents might think that pursuing a career or going to an art and design school is going to kind of lead to being a starving artist. And this is such a myth that we hope to really help to bust and to break down, because that couldn't be farther from the truth these days. So the creative industries, at Otis, we work very closely with many different companies in the LA and California area, as well as across the United States and even within Korea. And we do a study every year called the Otis Report on the Creative Economy, which is grant funded and really studies the economic impact of the creative industries on the state of California and the LA region, and how many creative professionals are actually working in these different industries. So I believe the figure is currently 797,000 just within LA County alone. Many of those are working at some of the companies that you see logos here. And this is a slide of companies where Otis students will do internships or go on to work after graduation. So you might be studying product design and then designing the interior of Teslas, or designing shoes at Nike, or iPhones at Apple. You might be an animator at Cartoon Network or Disney or Pixar. You might be a comic artist at Marvel. You might be designing video games at Blizzard, or a fashion designer at Adidas, or a motion designer at Netflix, or a toy designer at Mattel. There are so many different kind of options within the creative industries. And art and design schools specifically have so much experience helping to prepare students to go into these industries. Our career services departments are, really working closely with these companies. There's a lot of on-campus recruitment. We work closely with recruiters, and also helping to prepare students for the different types of application processes that they'll find applying for creative jobs. Applying for a fashion design job or an animation job, that's going to look differently. And so giving very specific advice and guidance for these creative positions. And students are also pursuing their passions and doing what they love, for the rest of their lives. And I think that, that happiness is obviously so important. And I'm going to pass it on to Isabel to add to that.
Definitely, yes. I also hope to add and dispel the myth of the starving artist. But yeah, I would agree with everything you always said. I definitely want to echo the advantage of going to an art and design school, because the career services will, creative jobs, that's what they know, that's what they do. All of their attention and focus is on, career paths in art and design, and those areas in particular. I do also want to mention, though, that at art schools in general, you're really taught to think creatively. You're taught to problem solve, or to enrich those skills that you already have. And those are such valuable skills for so many different applications. So even if you do decide to go into different areas, or to kind of combine different areas together, which I think most of you will end up doing, kind of finding your own combination of science and design, or fine arts and research, and or literature, you'll be able to kind of rise to any different challenge. Also, one really kind of cool thing too is that, of course, artists and designers go on and work, for graphic design companies, production companies, but also one of the companies that hires a lot of RISD grads is Philips Healthcare. So, they hire RISD alumni to design how their customers navigate their apps or navigate their websites. So, you can be designing this experience as well. So I think another really cool thing about art and design school is that you can find avenues that you maybe never thought of before. And also they have a lot of resources for people who want to pursue fine arts as well. There's grants and fellowships and residencies to help support the research and the studio practice of people working in kind of studio-based art. RISD has a Fulbright writing specialist who can help you kind of write a Fulbright proposal if that's something you're interested in. RISD is one of the top Fulbright producing specialty colleges in the US. We've had over 85 Fulbright recipients, which is a lot for such a little school. But all of this just to say that, it's actually a really wise investment to invest in a creative, problem solving focused education and a job in the creative field. That's something that can never be automated, this creativity, this innovation. So it's actually a very wise investment.
All right. It's amazing that we've already come to the end of the this part of the presentation. That was really interesting for me, who has zero background in art schools. And so thank you so much for all the wonderful, very specific tips. I know those listening are taking down notes. So this is a time for your questions to be answered by our panelists here. So please do make use of the Q&A box if you are on Zoom. If you are joining us on YouTube, you can go ahead and use the chat box there too. So I'm going to start it off with the questions. Last week, or a week before that, rather, we had a panel of performing arts professionals, and I asked a similar question to them, which I'll ask you is, how should students know if they should apply and attend a professional art and design school versus majoring in fine arts or design at like a more normal four-year public, not public or private institution or liberal arts institution? How would you guide students if they are trying to decide whether or not I should go to one of y'all schools, a professional art and design school versus a more larger school that provides different types of majors?
I can start this one off. I think that it's really important to kind of go through the portfolio development process. And if this is something that you really enjoy, if you really are passionate about making work for your portfolio, it's something that, you know, you spend all of your free time on. You're really curious about using different types of materials and mediums. You want to learn new techniques. You want to find ways to express your ideas creatively. Then definitely think about attending an art and design focused school. If you maybe have an interest in majoring in something like, you know, the sciences and doing something focused in art, then maybe an institution where you can double major or do a major minor in a liberal arts or a science focused area in addition to an art and design area might be a better choice for you. At all of our institutions, if at some point you decide that you do not want to pursue an art and design major, you will have to transfer to a different institution. So it is important to really kind of search within yourself and ask if, you know, this is something that you can be that committed to. You know, studio classes are typically 6 hours long. And students are often working late in the studios after class and all of their kind of free time. So it is something that you will be very dedicated to. And I'll let other folks kind of chime in on that too.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that, yeah, it really also depends on how you want to use your time, how you want to like focus your education. Of course, at an art and design school, you can bring other influences into your art and design practice, but the majority of the time, the majority of the focus, the majority of the conversations in those schools will be about making, you know, visual art, working in design. So, you know, say right now, you know, you're in high school, maybe you're that like one art kid or, you know, and I would say if you want to be surrounded by other people who are passionate about art, you don't want to be, you know, if you want to have it be more of a challenge, if you want to try different processes, if you want to be challenged, then I think an art and design school is for you. If you're really enjoy working in one way and that's just the one way you enjoy working, then I would say that, you know, maybe not an art and design school, because you will just be constantly pushed to, you know, question everything you're doing and how you're doing it. So I would say that's another thing to consider as well. Do you want to be surrounded by other artists and designers? Do you want to be challenged? If not, maybe just have art be a part of your college experience rather than the whole focus.
Great. So let's focus back to the specific tips that was given about the portfolio. For those students who might not be as familiar about which direction they should go, they would you advise students to approach the portfolio by showing different types of art and mediums, or should they focus on one specific type of art and medium or theme? So I guess the question is variety, diversity better, or is it better to kind of zone in and be more specific?
I think probably each of us could answer for the institution that we're representing today. So for RISD, I would say that the number one thing you want to be thinking about is including your most interesting work, the work that you feel is the best kind of representation of what makes you unique and the way you think. So that's definitely the first thing that should be your priority. But after that, I would say that RISD values variety, mixed media, experimentation. You know, even if you're going to just be including one discipline, like just photography, we like to see that you're experimenting with your process and even within that one discipline. So not just doing every photograph the exact same way, but experimenting with how you use photography, for example. So for RISD, variety is better, especially because all first year students begin their education in a foundation year where you're going to be trying all new ways of working. You're going to be working in different disciplines and materials. So we want to, also make sure that an applicant is a good fit for that kind of education. If you're only making oil paintings that are done in one way, that only feature like one kind of subject matter, while you might be incredibly talented at what you do, we might look at that portfolio and say, oh, okay, I don't know if this person would be as good of a fit for the foundation year and the way RISD teaches, just because they might not be willing to kind of experiment in the way that the first year kind of challenges you to do so. So I would say variety is valued more for RISD.
And then at Otis, we do have a first year foundation year. So students are coming in undeclared and you do not need to submit a major specific portfolio when you apply. But we do want you to focus on your kind of best, most recent work. So again, that's really kind of playing to what your strengths are in terms of the mediums that you're using and the process that you are using. So it's not that we really want to see every single medium that you've created work in. Say, for example, you're mostly drawing and painting focus, but you've made a few pieces and done some ceramics. Those maybe are not your strongest pieces. You might have a couple of examples, but unless you feel like they're really kind of strong examples of work, I wouldn't include them. So for us, that kind of seeing lots of different types of mediums is not definitely what we prefer. It's really kind of, again, focusing on what you're best at. If you're good at 6 different things or 10 different things, then yes, feel free to include them all.
Yeah, and it's fairly similar at OCAD University. We do have some programs that are direct entry and some programs that begin with a common first year, but there still are common courses within the first year of all of our programs. So your portfolio should show us, where your skills lie, but we also want to see some variety in the work that you're showing, some examples of different types of mediums that you're exploring. If you're applying to our photography program, let's say, you have to remember as an example that it's not a direct entry program. It begins with a common first year. So you won't actually be doing photography until you get into your second year. So we really want to see that you're willing to experiment and explore different types of mediums. Everyone at OCAD and probably at most art and design schools take a drawing course in their first year. So some examples of showing us that you can put pencil on a piece of paper. It can be in your sketchbook, it could be a finished piece. But again, that willingness to explore and experiment and use different media and show us a bit of variety.
Okay, great, thank you. So there's a good question out there asking if are any similarities and differences in studying art and design in the US versus Canada.
That's an interesting question. I would
I
imagine
guess
that
I'll,
there's definitely differences
oh,
between studying between any institution, but specific to US versus Canada, I don't know.
Donald, is there any observation that you've made that maybe OCAD is significantly different from the two institutions in the US here because it is in Canada versus in the US?
right, right. I think there's lots of similarities. The differences mainly lie within the city that it's located in. The quality of the education that you'll get is pretty much the same, I would say. Um, it's a much different process to get a study permit or immigration documentation to come to Canada than it is to go to the US. I know that is one major difference. Another difference about studying in Canada is that after you finish your program, you can apply for what we call a postgraduate work permit. So you can stay in Canada working, getting experience in your field for 3 years after you graduate. But in terms of the actual schools and the programs, yes, it will be different at each of our institutions, but there's lots of similarities, especially with a school so focused on art and design.
Great.
Yeah, I saw in the question too that they had kind of indicated the UK. I think the colleges of art and design in North America are obviously much more similar than you would find in the UK. And I know that the UK application process is like completely different than you'll find in the United States. And I think too that doing research on institutions that again are direct entry into a specific major versus having that first year foundation where students can be undeclared and really get to the campus and kind of explore the different programs. I think that's kind of a pretty key difference between different institutions. And within the United States, you find that difference in Canada as well. So a lot of, our institutions today have that kind of flexibility. But there are going to be specific institutions where on the application, you're actually applying to that major and then you're entering it from day one. It can be sometimes a little bit more difficult to change majors if after you've entered that program, you find that it's not exactly what you thought and that you might want to change. The direct entry to major institutions also tend to be more specialized in kind of one area versus kind of a more interdisciplinary approach. So looking at the actual curriculum, I think is really important because a graphic design program at one school can be really different from a graphic design program in another school. They might have a different kind of area of focus or different specialties. Maybe the major minor options are different, or being able to take electives outside of your major might be a little bit different. So actually looking at the specific curriculum is what I would recommend.
So actually on that note, there is a question for your specific institutions. Is it better to declare yourself as undeclared or to declare your major when you're applying? Is there an advantage when applying to know specifically what you want to major in?
So at Otis, like we are on the Common App, and so students can indicate their major of interest, but all students will enter undeclared, and they do not have to stick to the major that they listed on their application. They can also just say, I don't know which major I want to go into at this time. We don't really kind of factor that into the process of evaluating the student.
For RISD, it's pretty much exactly the same as what Yoi just described. You can indicate on the Common App, but that will not affect your admission at all. We do use that information kind of just to keep data and to also see how many students then eventually declare a major that's different than the one they originally thought they were going to enter. And I would say about a half to 2/3 end up going into a different major than they initially anticipated when they were applying to RISD. So that's just a kind of a fun fact, but yeah, you really don't need to be strategic about that. That won't matter for at least RISD and Otis.
And it's a little bit different at OCAD. We have mostly direct entry programs where you're going into your program from day one or the major that you've selected. Some of our programs do start with a common first year, as I mentioned earlier, like a foundation year, but all of our design programs, for example, are direct entry. So you will have to tell us on the application what program you want to go into. We use a slightly different application that's similar to the Common App, but it's called the OUAC, or the Ontario Universities Application Center. It's an online application, and you will declare your major on that application. And even though you are declaring your major, there is flexibility. So there are common courses, there is room to move around. And we are currently going through a complete curriculum transformation, essentially, to make things more flexible, to add more interdisciplinarity within our programs and within our courses. So yes, even though you're selecting a major and you're locked into that major in our design programs, there is room to take courses from other areas and to move around or to change your major without having to do an additional year of study.
Okay, great. Thank you. There are some questions in asking about the application process in general. We are focusing our attention on the portfolio today. So I wonder if you could speak to how other parts of the application, such as test scores and IB or AP scores and the transcript and maybe letter of recommendations, how that all fits in with the portfolio when you are viewing applications and assessing admissibility.
I can start with that, but because I imagine each of us will probably be similar, but a little different. So, RISD, we take a holistic look at all of your, application requirements, but of course your visual requirements are going to be the most important. So your portfolio, your RISD assignment, those are going to be what we spend the most time with, what is going to be the best indicator of if you're a good fit for RISD. The next kind of most important thing is going to be your transcripts. We're going to look at your two most recent years of grades, and we're going to kind of recalculate your grade point average. We're going to look at, we're really going to spend the most time with your academic classes, and see if you're taking higher level classes, if you're challenging yourself, if you're doing well. We look for about a B+ average. The next best thing would be to show us that your grades are improving over time. But that's we want to make sure you're prepared for the academic side of college. And I would say those are the two most important things. RISD's test optional for SATs and ACTs. So if you do include them, that will just kind of support that will just support your transcript and grade point average. But if you choose to not send them, that will not affect your admission. And things like your extracurricular activities, your Common App essay, those are all going to kind of add to us getting to know you, and can only give you an edge. I would say the same with letters of recommendation. I would say that, a really strong applicant immediately stands out from their portfolio, their grade point average. But I think, when we're kind of looking at an applicant and we're like, oh, they have some strengths, but I wish they didn't include that piece or that piece. Your essay, your letters of recommendation, those can kind of lift you up, and kind of add a little bit more context to your application. But generally, it's your visual materials that are going to be most important. Yeah, I can pass it to Yoy.
Yeah, so at Otis, the portfolio is definitely the most important part of your application. For students that are applying from Korea, we know that grading can be very rigorous. So we kind of look at your academic record, taking that into consideration. Your personal statement, which is like a 500-word essay about why you want to study art and design, is also an important part of the application and gives context to your background, what are your interests, why are you interested in coming to LA and to Otis. So that can be a really helpful piece of information. In addition, we do not require letters of recommendation. They are optional. Students that are doing IB or AP, that's always great to see, especially from international students. But if you're not at an international school and you're taking the TOEFL, the IELTS, or the Duolingo, or some sort of English proficiency test, for us, we're basically looking for you to meet the minimum requirement. And then otherwise, we're kind of just looking at the rest of your application materials. When deciding merit scholarships, we are primarily looking at your portfolio as well as your academics. So the portfolio really kind of stays the primary consideration.
Great.
And at OCAD, it really is the portfolio that's the key to getting in. That's what we look at first. That's who we determine who's going to be admitted. There are academic requirements, but applicants just have to meet at least the minimum requirements to confirm that they've met the conditions of their offer. There are language test requirements as well. And the academic requirements change slightly depending on your educational background. So it depends on if you're applying from a local school or an international school. That will change what we're looking for. But essentially it's a minimum 70% overall average or a B average, depending on the grading system. Sometimes that can be a C average as well. We do not look at reference letters or letters of recommendation. They're not required. If they're submitted, they only get viewed by myself or another person on the admissions team. The portfolio reviewers don't look at them. They look at your work and your statement of intent.
Great. I think we have maybe time for one last question. And so I want to just turn it back to maybe a more personal question that was asked by a student attending about if any of you three actually attended an art school, what encouraged you to do this and to pursue this route, and how was your experience? So we don't have a lot of time, but maybe if you could speak to that for a minute, and maybe also this could be an opportunity to say any final words you want to say to our students attending today.
Sure, we could kind of go along the lines again. So yes, I am an alumni from RISD. I graduated in 2015, and I always loved drawing. I never really saw myself being an artist when I was in elementary school, middle school, beginning of high school. So I went to a public high school. I had a really fantastic art teacher though, and I think he helped me see that, art and design is so much more than just putting pencil to paper. It's a way to kind of, document the culture and the kind of collective conscious at different moments throughout history and time and different places. So I really was drawn to that kind of dialogue that's inherent in art and design. I majored in painting, so definitely that kind of contemporary art dialogue really kind of was so interesting to me. So that drew me to an art and design school. And also because of, I didn't go to like an art magnet school or something, I was that only one art kid in my high school. So, people would just ask me to like draw their dog for them or like design a tattoo for them. And, it wasn't this like dialogue. It wasn't this like, oh, and I did want that. I wanted to be surrounded by people who, we could kind of riff ideas off of each other and collaborate. So for me, an art and design school was like Finally, I found my people. I feel like I'm in a community where we can collaborate and inspire each other. Um, so that's really what drew me to art and design school. I do also recommend looking into pre-college programs. I would say almost every art school has one. They're all different lengths, they're all different price tags, they're all different intensities. And I think that can be a really great way to kind of do like a test run of art school to see, if the intensity suits you, or if you're like, this is maybe more of a hobby. So that's actually the process that I followed. I ended up attending a pre-college just for that very reason. I wanted to see like, oh, maybe this is what I want to do. And for me, it was like oh, okay, yes, this is what I want to do. So I recommend looking into that as well.
For me, I actually went the route of going to a large public university. I didn't have a very strong art program in high school. Nobody told me that there's art and design schools out there. And so when I was there, it was very difficult to kind of major in visual arts. There was a lot of competition to get into certain classes. It just wasn't the focus of the institution. They were much more concerned about funneling money and attention into engineering than they were into art and design. And so I actually, decided to not finish my degree in art and design. I actually have a degree in history, but I worked at the art gallery on campus the whole time I was a student and got really interested in kind of the visual arts administration side of things. And I have a master's in visual arts administration, really wanting to kind of help artists and designers to find their kind of true passion and to, I found a really good fit working at art and design schools because I lacked that kind of education and knowledge when I was in high school about what the opportunities out there were.
And I did go to OCAD. I'm a graduate of OCAD University. I finished in 2002. And I was also that one art kid at my high school. I'm from a really small town in Southern Ontario. There's only one high school. There's two now, but when I was a student in high school, there was only one high school. And I was the kid that all the art teachers thought should go to art school and the guidance counselor thought should go to art school. And I did. And while I was a student, I got hired as basically a campus ambassador by the admissions office. And that's really how I found my path to where I am now. I did, work in the industry or related industries for a little while, but I always found myself coming back to education, essentially, to try and help students discover or figure out where they need to go, and that art and design education can lead to lots of different areas, and it can be a great path to follow for education. So that's why I do what I do now.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your personal stories. That's really great. And I think really helpful for those listening as they try to figure out their path. I'm going to quickly flip to this page here where we have the email addresses of our panelists. So I know that there were questions that we did not get to. So please continue this conversation by reaching out and also checking out the links that were put up here in the chat box. And this is the beginning of a conversation. So I want to thank our panelists for waking up very early in the morning, especially to Yoy in California, where she started at 3:30 a.m. And to the rest of you so thank you so much for spending your morning with us. For those of you in Korea, thank you for spending your evening with us. I know it's a school night, so yeah, really enjoy this conversation and hope you will consider these institutions and continue talking with them offline. And next week, we will have our last Tuesday talk about women colleges. So if you're interested, please tune in. And at that, we will say goodbye. 안녕히 가세요.
Thank you.